Okay, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Sean's Green Room podcast. Please remember, this is not a comedy show. However, it is a show about the comedy business, okay? Where we attempt to pull back the magical veil on the comedy brick wall, giving you, the listeners, an opportunity to hear the real stories from the artist and the industry itself directly. Your podcast host has been in the comedy club business for nearly 2 decades, that's right. And he has worked with comedians like Ralphie May, now he's a big boy, Joe Rogan, he's tough here, Kevin Hart, Russell Peters. Please welcome, okay, your host, Sean Traynor. Do it!
This next guest, you've seen him on Mind of Mencia and numerous HBO specials. Please welcome Carlos Mencia.
All right, well, welcome out, Mr. Carlos Mencia.
What's up,
How are
brother?
you doing, sir?
I'm good, man. I'm
Excellent.
good.
Well,
A little overweight, but good. No, because I lost weight in the beginning of this, and I looked good, and I felt good, and I was like, all right, I'm getting into shape. I'm like, you know, I can see my pubic hairs now. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It was like, wow, I can shave without being like, I hope I'm getting the right spot. I was like,
you're looking good. It was really
well,
nice.
no. What happened was about a month ago, my brother, my wife owns. My wife is from Roseburg, Oregon, and we lucked out into this property, but we own this really beautiful home right on the river, pretty much. And my brother came up, and he is a cook. Like, he is a master griller. I mean, he literally does a thing called Bert's Tacos and goes, you know, on the weekends to make tacos for people at their house and stuff like that. So dude, he just kept making like.
He's good at what he does, I guess.
Oh, bro, like I'm used to like eating an apple and a coffee in the morning, and he's like, "You want some chorizo with papas?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, dude!" And dude, I'm just seeing myself get fatter and fatter, bro. And I know it because I'm like, I have clothes over there that are just for there. So my clothes in that house are for that house. So I know when I'm losing or gaining weight. And my trunks are starting to get tighter, bro. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is not right. So I don't feel great yet, but I feel like, okay, I'm not with my brother. I haven't seen him for a week. So I've been eating normal for 1 week. But I feel better.
Yeah, I call it the quarantine 20 because it's definitely it's funny. I tried putting on a suit the other day.
You too, huh?
There's the button on that one was just, I looked like I was going to shoot off and kill somebody.
It was hanging off the dude,
man,
like, dude, it was like cliffhanger, do it, go.
So I was actually looking on your online profile, and you have the skinnier picture of you. And I was laughing with one of my marketing guys, and we were talking about how it's like your dating profile. Like
you know what it is? It isn't. What it is, it's me saying to myself, dude, you have to start trying to look like that, bro.
Back.
It's it's part of me trying to tell me, like, dude, look more like this so people aren't shocked when they're like, that is not Carlos Mencia.
Did he eat Carlos? What happened? Well, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man.
I appreciate you coming out.
Thanks.
Little history. So we've known each other I've been at the clubs for 20 years. I think.
So I've known you for that long.
Yeah.
When you were a waiter, way back in the days.
I was coming into the green room. Yeah, can I get you some?
Yeah, I'm gonna be a waiter for the weekend. If you need anything.
I was skinny then, really skinny. That was and blonde hair.
You were the cutest. You were the cutest boy. You were the cutest boy there. I would love to hear off the air, because I don't think you would ever tell these stories on the air at any time soon. Anyway, of all the people that don't know are gay, of comedians that don't know are gay, who just tried to bang the hell out of you and hit you hard.
Yeah, I'll be honest.
Love to hear those stories.
It was very flattering.
I would love to hear those stories, dude. And just I would love to see the look on your face of like, you're gay? Like, you had no idea whatsoever. There were no stories about this. It was just wait. Or I want to hear the story, but off the air, and it's not sometimes. Of somebody that you had no idea was gay at the time. And not that you were homophobic. You were like, hey, man, where do you guys go normally? And you were like, oh, we go to the bar over here. And you went to the bar with them thinking like you're going with just
he's
the regular
buying
guy.
drinks?
Right.
And I'm like, dude, this guy's great.
And then all of a sudden you realize
and I go, He's trying to fuck me.
They're fed you up for the kill, dude. They're fed you up for the kill.
Right. I know these moves.
Right. He's trying to say the same shit that you say to girls, and you're like, wait, I'm the girl. I'm the girl. Right?
Thank you.
Right? Right? So now all of a sudden you start going, I need you to go home.
I ordered the most expensive things at that point. It's well, I'm going to get my money's worth.
But you were that guy. You know what I mean? I remember.
Yep. And then I got old, had kids.
It happens, dude. It happens. You know.
Okay, so speaking of history, now I know you got started at the Comedy Store in like 88.
88.
When did you what was your first comedy set? Was it at that club in Houston?
No, my first comedy set performance was at the Laugh Factory.
The first one at the Laugh Factory. Yeah. That's pretty impressive.
So what happened was I didn't know what comedy was.
Okay.
You know, part of my naivete is what got me in trouble in the beginning of my career, because most comics have an idol, like most athletes, right? I want to be put in the blank, whoever
Richard
that is,
Pryor,
whoever
Eddie
that
Murphy,
is. And I would hear stories later on in my comedy career of like they're interviewing Chris Rock about when he started. He's like, when I started, I was Richard Pryor. I was Richard Pryor. That's who I was. I did Richard Pryor. I did his jokes. I was Richard Pryor. I didn't have that. I didn't know what comedy was. I didn't know what stand-up was.
Was it because you didn't watch it, or
where to watch it? I grew up in the hood.
To?
I grew up in the hood. We didn't have any cable, so the only time to watch is comics would have been after 11:30 during the Tonight Show or something like that. Would have been the only time.
Right.
But we were an ethnic family, so I had to fight just to get, an 8 o'clock to 8:30 spot to watch Mark and Mindy. You know what I mean? After that, it was somebody else.
Remote.
I mean, so
AKA the channel switch on the UHF.
Whoever that was. Yeah. I mean, seriously. And, the channels that we watch, I know the UHF because, we had to watch channel 52, channel 24, channel 34, anything above 13, you had to go to the UHF. So I never got to see that. Plus, I'm a student. I've always been a student. It's never been anything different for me. I mean, if you watch me perform, you could tell I suck in a lot of information. It's who I was. So what happened was I graduated, started trying to find myself. And then in 87, 88, Fox became a network.
Right.
And when Fox became a network, they had a bunch of comedians on their late show. Joan Rivers had a show. That's when she had the fight, and she ended up because they gave her a show and all this kind of stuff. Well, at that point, I was going to work at Farmers Insurance from 7 to 3:30, and from 5 to 10, I would go to school. So I was going to school full time and doing work full time. So at that point, I couldn't go to sleep after 10. My brain was still tingling from all the stimulation.
Right.
And I'd never dealt with that before. This was the first time where my brain was a little too wired for me to go to sleep at a regular hour.
Right.
So by 11:30, everybody at my mom's house was asleep. So I started watching that show, and she had a shitload of comedians all the time. And I remember laughing, not thinking anything about it, but I remember beginning to format. Like there were not sets, but there were little jokes that, like I would hear a comedian tell that were very general, about everybody, and seemed more like an opinion. And I remember kind of taking that in without really understanding what it was. So when I would go to work, I would tell people of things that I saw that frustrated me.
Okay.
And it was beginning to be formatted in that comedic way. Okay. I didn't know.
Did you know you were funny?
No,
Were people laughing when you talked about it?
Yes, but I didn't do it for that reason. They were angry. See, I was angry, right? And so I like angry comics. I like Rick Dukeman and people that can take you to an angry place and make you laugh at it.
Right.
That frustration part. And so Kinnison type stuff, so I would come and go, did you guys see what was on the news last night? And they were like, no. And I would say it, but I guess the way I was saying it was formatted slightly more toward that comedy thing. And they were all like, dude, you're so funny, bro. You should do stand-up. And I was like, whatever. Yeah, cool. Well, there was this guy named Joe who had committed to his life. He hated it, but he committed to it.
Okay.
He had his wife, he had his kids. He was a quiet man. He was just, he was never going to be promoted beyond where he was. This was his life. This was him. And he was just that monotone guy that would tell you, like, hey, you're slacking off. You need to pick it up a little more. 3 to 5% would do.
Wait till I die.
That guy, right? Yeah, just like, it's a long walk to the casket. You know what I mean? So he came up to me and he said, you're really funny. You should do stand-up comedy or at least try it because you make me laugh.
Oh,
and then he walked away like that. He said it like that.
I think he laughs.
And I went, he laughs? Like, what? So I told my girlfriend at the time, Lana, about it, and she hooked me up with tickets to the Improv on Melrose.
All right.
So I wasn't even of age. So she was. So I said, you go. I'm going to wait till the end, and then I'm going to pretend I'm late and go in. And so that's exactly what happened. I pretend, I got there late because I wasn't 21. They let me in, and I saw Rick Dukeman, Paula Poundstone, Rick Dukeman. But Rick Dukeman was the one that I remember because he did a bit where he was in line at the grocery store. And it's a joke that's been, it's a joke that became hack that a lot of comics did, but it was being behind that person, and whatever that joke was, it was the elevation of like, no, you're going to buy that. No, price check. No, coupons. All the bitches on checkbook. You know what I mean?
I've heard that a few different versions of that.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, I didn't know that at the time. All I remember was loving that he had a place to vent his frustration.
Right.
And
he's talking about something you've seen 1,000 times.
I'd never seen it.
Well, I'm talking not the joke, but I'm talking about in the store.
Sure.
And then all those feelings, you're like, that's exactly how I feel. I love this point of view.
Right. But more than any of what you're saying, what I fell in love with was, oh my God, you can talk about those things in that way. Like you don't have to be smiley, happy. Hey, you don't. You can literally make people laugh if you're good enough venting your frustrations. And most people don't know how that club is formed, but the club is formed. There's an entrance where there's a restaurant, and then there's literally a tunnel. It's a square tunnel that's like 10 by 10 or maybe 8 by 8 kind of. And you walk through that tunnel for about 20 feet, and then you're in the showroom.
Right.
Well, on the way out of that show, I remember like a movie. I stopped like right under a light, like Jesus's light is on my head. And in slow motion, everybody is walking around me to leave, and nobody's bumping me, nobody's pushing me. They're just walking around me. And I slowly turn around to look at the stage, and I didn't think it. I heard or felt, you can do that.
Yeah.
That was it. And I stayed there for a minute. I took it in. I walked out. And my mistake was that night I told my cousin Benji, who's in a wheelchair, who looks up to me, who always looked up to me from the sense that I always accomplished whatever I wanted to do. And there was never a barrier. So when I said, let's go see a movie, and he said, well, the movie I want to see is only playing downtown because it's this Chinese kung fu flick. And I was like, all right, well, they make buses now for handicapped people. So these were the years where they went from that old bus that was rounded on the top that you had to get up to the newer buses where the back turned flat and you can actually put somebody in a wheelchair.
Okay.
But there were only a few of those.
Right.
So we would start walking to downtown and stop at the bus and wait to see if the next bus was handicap accessible or not.
If not,
and if it wasn't, we just kept walking. So the first time it happened, we got no buses. So I got to downtown and pushed his ass all the way there. And we got there. And so that's who he knew. He knew me as that.
Right.
He knew me as, dude, you're the dude that walked like 15 miles with me and pushed me to go see a stupid kung fu movie. Like, that's who you are, dude. So I told him I want to do stand-up. Bro, every goddamn week after that, I'd hear, his wheelchair. Thought you were going to do stand-up.
What happened?
What happened? When are you going to do it? So one day, I said, you know what? Fuck this guy. I got his wheelchair. I put it in the back of my Camaro. I had a 1978 Camaro at the time. Put it in the back of my Camaro. I said, you know what? We're going now because I just called and they're having amateur night at the Laugh Factory. And all you have to do is get there before 5 o'clock And so on the way there, he goes, what are you going to talk about? And I was like a movie. I didn't think about that part.
Yeah.
So I literally stopped at a bookstore and got a comedy book, like a book of comedy. And I started reading it to format it, right?
You're looking for the most important chapter.
Yeah, I'm reading like to see how you format jokes. Like, what is this? And so I was like, okay, so the one story I wanted to tell was that I remember I was in the mid '80s or something. There was a plane, Aloha Airlines was flying from one island of Hawaii to the other, and in the middle of the flight, the fuselage came apart, and the plane landed, but like literally a big chunk just came off the plane, and a flight attendant was sucked out of the plane during the process. And on the news, they said flight attendant sucked out of plane, blah blah blah, at how many thousand feet, and then they go, she's presumed dead. So I thought, okay, that bothers me. How the fuck is she presumed dead? Can anybody explain to me the one scenario where this fucking woman survived? Like, just give me the one scenario where you could go, well, this could have happened. Okay, good. Then there is a presumption. There's no fucking presumption.
Umbrella.
She's goddamn dead, all right? Yeah. Like, I don't know who the family is, but if you're here, she's dead. You're not going to find her. Don't look. And then, of course, the comedy part came where I went, was she wearing Kotex with wings or some shit? Is that how she flew in? And I told a bunch of other shitty, stupid jokes, but that was the one joke that I had written because it was my thought. And dude, when I got off stage, the owner of the comedy club, he goes, buddy, this thing you do, buddy, where you pretend it's your first time, buddy, and then you come and kill it. It's great, buddy, great. And I go, well, hey, who the fuck are you?
Right.
And he's like, I'm Jamie Masada, buddy. I am the club owner. I was like, and then immediately, I was like, oh shit, the club owner. So what are you saying? And he was like, I like the gimmick. I go, what gimmick? The buddy. You never do this before, the buddy. I go, dude, I've never done this before. That's my first time on stage. And he's like, no, buddy, I know you. From where? From where are you? I go, dude, I'm from East LA. I'm from here. No, buddy, you from somewhere, you do this, and then you come? I go, I swear to God, that's my first time ever on stage. I'm not kidding you. And then I went, you don't believe me? And I picked up my hands like this. And dude, they were shaking so bad, bro. And he looked. And I remember there was this long pause where he stared at me and he went, buddy, whatever you do for a living, quit right now. This is you. This is you. Greatest advice ever. Followed up by, do more joke about lowriders. Not the best. I was like, you shouldn't have followed it up with that shit. But at the time, I had no idea. I just, you know what I mean? And so that was the beginning. And within, God, I would say 2 to 3 months of that moment, I finished the semester. I stopped, I didn't completely finish, and I stopped working at Farmers Insurance. Got a job as a doorman at the Comedy Store.
Okay.
And I was there for the whole time. The problem with me was, unlike most comics, they get good before they go to those places.
Yeah. That's yes.
I got good at those places, and I didn't have idols. So my idols became people that people don't know. Fred Greenlee, Charles Cozart, people that a lot of people don't know, but they affected me. So when I started doing stand-up, I wasn't doing Richard Pryor. One of my jokes sounded just like Charles. The other one sounded just like Eric's. The other one, you know what I mean?
Right.
So they would see me perform. The older cats, they knew what was going on, right? The John Caponeras of the world, like he would come up to me and go, you saw me do a joke, right? I go, I see you do all your jokes. What are you talking about? And he goes, that one's from me, right? I go, yeah. I mean, it's not the same as your joke. He goes, no, but I know you got it from me. I goes, yeah. And he's like, it's cool. Just at some point, you'll shed that. You'll become yourself. It's okay. My problem was with the guys that weren't at that established level, right? So all of a sudden, I'm doing comedy for a year or whatever that is, and I'm killing it, but I'm killing it with the hackiest shit you could possibly imagine. None of it had balls. And so that was the beginning of me, realizing that you have to become your own person here. Like this is this is not the way it normally works.
Yeah.
The problem is that by the time I became that person, everybody had seen me be this other young guy, and I was the guy who got off stage, and if I had a good set for me, I had a good set. Like I've never measured myself to other people. I measure myself to the max of a room, but not to other people. And so for me, it was always just like, I'm going to get up there and I'm going to be funny, and there's 20 people and I made 8 laugh. Shit, last time I made 6 laugh. Yeah. This was a great show. So I'd get off like, man, it was great. And some of the comics would be like, what are you talking about? That wasn't great. It was like, well, it was great for me, motherfucker. Why are you trying to ruin my shit? Well, I did better today than I'd ever done. That's great for me. Right. I'm not...
Milestones.
I'm not Richard Pryor. I'm not going to go up there and kill it. Well, what started happening was when Richard Pryor would show up, or when, anybody, Martin Lawrence, you name the star, celebrity, they would go on. And I mean, dude, the audience would just, oh my God, you guys don't understand. During Living Color, who's here? Damon Wayans! Oh, fuck! You know what I mean? And all the comics, like roaches, dude, to the back of the stage, right? They're all watching him perform. All of a sudden, he goes, all right, well, I just wanted to practice that joke. It's funny. Who's next? All the comics like roaches, the lights are on, scatter. Nobody wanted to follow him.
No.
Right? Every comedian was like, well, I'll go on after whoever goes on after him. But I don't want to waste I didn't understand this at the time, but it wasn't that they were afraid to follow him. It was that they knew that you're going to take a hit no matter what.
Yeah.
And they were like, I don't want to spend 5 minutes taking a hit for my 15-minute spot.
Yeah.
So somebody else take the hit, and then I'll do my spot. I was the idiot.
They would just take
That was like, what? Hello,
Yep.
I'm in.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I learned how to follow that energy and transfer it to yourself.
Well, that's one thing I don't know if back then, but you have amazing amount of energy.
Yeah.
It's crazy how much work you put up on that stage.
Right. I learned it from those moments.
You would have to.
Learned it from following those guys.
You got to have something to keep those people entertained, because they're catching up.
Sure.
They're trying to catch their breath.
Sure.
Yeah.
And there's tricks. This is where I learned what we call comedy tricks, right? So when I try to help out young comics, I tell them, look, I don't care what you say. Because every young comic, especially today, starts off with, I don't want to be like anybody else. I want to do my own thing. It's like, dude, trust me. Whatever fucking comedy comes out of your mouth now, I could tell you where you got it from. I could tell you where the genesis of it from, or I could at least tell you, oh, so you hate this comedian, so you're trying to do this comedy because it's way anti whatever comic.
Right.
It all comes from somewhere.
Right.
You know what I mean? If we were to all die right now and somebody were to wake up in 100 years, they're not going to be able to work all this stuff that we have, right?
Right.
You have to build it. They're not going to be able to build a television, right? Because we came up to this. This happened because of just millions of other infinitesimal moments that came to be able to make that thing appear in that right there. And that's the same for comedy. It's the same for everything. So they were doing their thing. I was doing my thing, and I realized that now when I want to say to comics is like, look, learn these tricks. They're elemental. You don't have to use them all the time, but learn all of the tools so that you're going to find that there's a certain drawer that you enjoy more than any other drawer, but have access to those other drawers. So if you follow a really, really, really famous person, you first have to go on stage and acknowledge that you're giddy just like the audience. So don't go up there like, Damon, I'm the shit. You go up there and you go, give it up for Damon, and you're like, holy fucking Damon. And then they go, right. So now they're with you.
Right.
Right? They're with you because they're like, he's like me. And then on the way out, hey, Damon, I can act. I'm just saying, bro, I can act. I saw a bit you did the other day, and there were some Mexicans, and they didn't sound Mexican-y. I'm just saying, bro, they sounded Puerto Rican. And then I go, oh yeah, there's a difference between Mexicans and Puerto Ricans. Now they're in, right? Now they're in, and so I learned stuff like that, right? So what I teach these kids is like figure those things out. Don't run away from them. Like every comedian that does Oh, I got asked this because what club is it? The comedy zone in Mandarin, which is Jacksonville. On Saturdays, they have this. They get together and kind of
workshop,
critique each other.
Okay.
Workshop kind of a thing. So I did it, and one of the guys was basically trying to say to me, why do you use that voice to depict stupid people so much? Basically what he's saying. Okay. Like what he was trying. So what he really wanted to say was like, I feel like it's cheating that you do that because every time you do it, you're going to get a laugh just based on the voice. Right?
Okay.
Which he's right.
Yes.
But I built that voice.
Right.
I made that voice what it is. You can't just make up a voice and have people follow it. There's a path to this voice. And believe it or not, I said, if you follow me around the country, that voice will change based on local colloquial ideals and rhythms. You know what I mean? So in Alabama, that voice gets rednecky.
Okay.
Here, it's not rednecky.
Okay.
Partially rednecky, but not completely rednecky. Now, if I'm in East LA, that voice gets very Mexican-y. In Miami, it gets very Cuban-y. But there's an ethnic idiot, but there's also a regular idiot. So, these are things that you have to use. And a lot of young comics want to fight it because they think, no, well, if I'm going to make fun of somebody stupid, I'm just going to make fun of that guy. And it's like, it doesn't work that way.
You need to be more relatable to the...
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to... Look, you're still bound by the rules of stand-up. It doesn't matter what it is. And trust me, because there's this new thing going around in young comics, and it'll work for performances, but it won't work for stand-up, which is all you have to do is say something fun, interesting. It doesn't have to be funny. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It does.
And I see that a lot, especially, I watch a lot of new comics, and sometimes they'll kill on a show, and I'm like, man, they're great. I'll put them on a different showcase.
Right.
And it's almost like they're doing inside jokes to themselves.
Correct.
And you're just watching like...
Right.
Hey, man,
Yeah.
you are in charge of making everybody else in here laugh.
Exactly.
Not just you and one buddy in the back
Right.
that you have, and I see that all the time.
Yeah. So I tell these guys, don't do that. Get away from that. Don't be afraid. You know what I mean? You can't be Michael Jordan without Dr. J.
Okay.
Right? And you can't be Dr. J without some guy that was called the GOAT that nobody knows about, who inspired Dr. J because he was a crack addict or heroin addict, if I'm not mistaken. But that dude had so many hops that people would get a ladder and put $100 on the top of a backboard and go, if you can get it, it's yours. And the dude, from what I understand, was like 5'11" or something, and he jumped so high, he would pick up the $100 and leave. But then, of course, when the people were like, look at him, he was amazing, he was gone to get his fix. You know what I mean? So we all have somebody to go to. There's no shame in that. You know what I mean? People are trying to run away from this so much young comics, and I tell them, don't, just find that. It's like, I go, dude, you cheat right now and you don't even know it. And they're like, what do you mean? I don't cheat. I go, yeah, you do. You know how when you say stories and you go, you know when you're in your car and you're driving and your chick says this? I go, that's a cheat because you're assuming that everybody's just like you. So instead of saying I was in my car with my girlfriend and she said this, you're cheating by saying, this happens to you too. That doesn't happen to everybody.
Right.
But you're making it seem that way, which is great. That's a tool.
It works.
That's one of our tools. My point to you is you're bound by the same rules.
Right.
And those are the tools. Know that they're tools is what I'm trying to tell you. Use them appropriately.
Right.
But, these young comics is different. Part of my angst with the comedy world, a decade ago was that I didn't understand them in that respect because like I just told you, I got bumped. Man, I mean, we were sitting around with my brother the other day and we were going, wow. It was very rare that I had an 11 o'clock spot and I got on by 11:10, 11:30 because somebody would always pop in.
Right.
So, I mean, I remember being on stage at 3 o'clock in the morning because they wouldn't cut it off. And as long as there were people there, they're like, wow, you had a spot, do your spot. I mean, they loved comedy. So when I first started coming out in comedy during the 90s and I was getting bumped by everybody in the world, all I could, dude, I was salivating for years, waiting till I popped.
Do you bump somebody?
Fuck yeah, dude! What? Are you kidding me? Are you serious? Because here's the thing. I was a Comedy Store guy.
Right.
And I would do the other spots sometimes, but I was a Comedy Store
you
guy.
did the door there.
Exactly.
You're part of the family there.
But I knew that the minute I got a TV show, I was an improv guy. Yeah. I was a Comedy Store guy. I was a Laugh Factory guy.
It diversifies your portfolio.
All of a sudden, the Monica was like, Carlos Mencia's on the stage. You know, buddy, where have you been, buddy? Did you listen, buddy? Did you do joke about the Lord Rider, buddy? You know what I mean? And that's exactly what happened, dude. It's exactly what happened. And I mean, if you go online, more than the bullshit rhetoric, the real stories that comics tell about me, it's not about jokes. They're pretty much all about it. Let me tell you about Carlos. One time I had a spot at 10:45 and at 12. And by the way, true stories. I did it with impunity. It was done to me. I did it, but there was no malice, by the way, in what I was doing. It was just as an immigrant, right? I was not an American citizen, so I couldn't vote, right? So it was one of those things where it was like, I can't fucking wait till I become a citizen, because I never drank, I never smoked. You know this, never did anything, because I was an immigrant with a green card, and if you get pulled over for DUI, you get anything that shit?
You're out.
Yeah, they either kick you out or you can't become an American citizen. So I sacrificed that. That was a choice I made to not do that so that I could become, a citizen. But when I did become a citizen, I was like, I get the vote. That's the way it was for me, right? I look at it this way. I got hazed like everybody before me. Right. But I came into the comedy world at a year at a time where people were like, hey, hazing's not cool, bro. You know what I mean? And so I didn't understand it at the time. Today, I would go back and tell myself, like, dude, these are Gen Xers. They grew up different than you. They didn't have parents who made them work in the summer for their shit. I remember the first check I ever got, $97.36. I'll never forget it. I showed my dad, like, dude, look at this check. And he took it and gave me $20. And I was like,
I need you to sign the back.
Yeah, what the fuck just happened? I gave you, wait a minute, dude, I've been going to school. This is not the right math. And then him telling me how much I owed him for all the shit that he bought me. And it was a losing situation. It was just the way it was. But I had to pay my dues to get where I was. These young comics, and I'm not hating on them. It just was a change of the guard. They grew up having everything they wanted, getting all the shit that they asked for. They had the ability to say, oh, I don't like that for dinner. I didn't.
Right.
Because if I didn't like it, I wasn't eating. There was no pantry. There was no other food. You know what I mean? My mom bought the day's food for that day. Mm-hmm. And whatever she made, that was it. So if you were like, I don't like it, nobody got mad.
Okay, I'll eat it.
She's like, okay. Yeah. And then my brother was like, oh, go for me. And he did. And then I'd be like, fuck, I didn't eat. I'm hungry. And, but there was no, I'm going to go get a sack and make a sandwich. There's nothing. Like, this is where I learned, believe it or not, this is where tortilla soup comes from, okay. Right? It's literally leftover tortillas that you pour in chicken broth so they don't go bad. So like that, sometimes we had, of leftovers. But so I feel like I got hazed and they put a plunger in my butthole and I was like, hey, if everybody's doing it, that's it. And then when it came time that I was like, I got the plunger, everybody was like, no, that's inappropriate. You can't do that. What the fuck, Carlos? And I'm like, no, but they did it to me. It's cool, right? It's cool. It wasn't. No. It wasn't. It didn't come off as cool. And at the time, I wasn't aware of it. But even had I been aware of it, I wouldn't have given a shit about their feelings. I wouldn't have. I would have done it anyway, but only because it had been done to me. But I wish I could go back, because a lot of what the damage or the hurt or the pain that had come from other comics was from that shit. Dude, for 2 years, I'd call comics up and be like, hey, man, I know I bumped you and, I'm sorry. And they're very cordial and kind and nice, but I literally had to do an apology tour for that.
An apology tour.
Yeah,
I like that term.
I did. And here's the funny thing, dude. I would call these guys up, right? And I'd get the number of somebody that I'd heard. Like, here's how it would go. I'd go to the Comedy Store and somebody would be like, hey, how's it going? Oh, no, no. Oh, I was on the road with so-and-so. Bro, he don't like you, dude. What'd you do to him? What'd I do to who? Oh, fuck, man. Oh, okay, give me his number. So I'd call him the next day and be like, hey, man, I heard that you were angry at me and, tell me what's up. And they're like, dude, bro, man, there's this one time where my dad, had just come to see me perform and it was the first time ever. And dude, you bumped me, and because of that, that kind of shit. And I was like, well, fuck, dude, no. So anyway, I'm really sorry. But after all of that, I would always say to every single one of them, hey, man, there's this joke stealing thing out there about me. So I'm going to be frank with you. Do we need to have a conversation about that too?
Yeah.
Oh, no, man. I never had a problem with that, bro. You just fucking pissed me off and you hurt my feelings and, you were just selfish. And I'd say, oh, okay, cool, and move on. And so that's how I began to learn that, all right, this wasn't about, the joke stealing thing was a way for you to get mad at me and put your shit out there that you were pissed at me, but you were really mad because I bumped you. And so that's when I learned what my damage to the comedy community was. But I'm okay with it because I was a sign of the time. I wasn't raping anybody. I wasn't doing any crazy shit like that. So what I try to tell young comics is how to avoid that kind of shit.
Yeah.
How to avoid talking to other comics about certain shit.
Yeah.
How not to sit around and complain that comic A got a show or they got a this or they got a that or hey man, their deal is this, why is my deal that? All that kind of shit is stuff that gets you in trouble with this. And know that, I told that group of people there, and if there were comics here, I'd tell them, look, you guys be friends as much as you possibly can, man, but know that if one of you makes it big, this little friendship is not going to be able to maintain the stability because at least 3 of you are going to think you're funnier than that guy. You deserve it more than that guy. So I try to help these guys deal with those pitfalls as well as doing the stand-up. That's why what you were talking about earlier, the list of people that I have mentored to go on to greatness is astonishing.
It is. Every time you came through the club, you'd always bring somebody else with you. It was always one of those things with you didn't have a problem following anybody. And this is obviously because of your training.
Yeah.
And so you had
the funniest guy in Dallas is going on before you. Is he the greatest comedian ever in the history of the world? No. I'll be able to follow. Right.
I can handle this.
I can do that.
Yeah. But as far as the list. Okay, so let's name drop a few.
Freddie Soto, Pablo Francisco, Joe Coy, Josh Blue, Brad Williams, Bobby Lee,
Alonzo,
Cristela Alonzo. Yeah. So I'm sure I'm missing somebody. Steve Trevino, my bad. I forgot. Sorry, Steve. Steve, who doesn't say good stuff about me, but that's cool.
I had a podcast with him just recently, and he did speak well. And I think there was some show where Joe Coy got put into a different spot, and I think that's where his feelings got hurt. But I think that's the mentality of a comedian. And I think a lot of comedians that are
let's talk about that incident as an example. Okay. His perspective. His perspective.
Oh, I know his perspective.
Okay, I'll tell you mine. He was somebody that toured with me for about 4 to 5 years, and
you found him here in Dallas.
More actually, more than 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
No, believe it or not, by the time he came here, that's not the first time I met him.
Okay.
The first time I met him, a cocky young little dude comes up to me and my wife and says, I'm a comedian. We had sold out show at the Selena Auditorium in Corpus Christi, Texas.
Okay.
Oh, no, it wasn't Selena Auditorium. It was a Harbor Playhouse. Sat 500 people and we were doing 4 shows. We were sold out on the shows, and he comes up and he says, hey, man, I'm funny. And I said, yeah, great. So I stepped away, and, my wife was like, hey, you should put him on. You should, he's a young comedian. I go, I don't know what he does. And if you're a young comedian in a place like this, that doesn't say much because there's no comedy clubs here. There's nobody I can call. I don't know that this guy's funny. And she's like, well, you follow greatness. You can follow, a shitty set.
Right.
Just who cares? So I let him on, and he did a bunch of jokes, and that was it. So that was the first time. So once he started working here, it was all, I already knew who he was, but I kind of took him from here, brought him on the road. he was part of Mind of Mencia writing staff.
Right.
So I gave him a job as a writer on Mind of Mencia. And so when I did the Punisher tour in 2006, I didn't want him on the tour, not because I didn't feel anything. I just thought to myself, I know I'm going to get a lot of repeat fans, a lot of my fans, and I want to expose them to a different show.
Right.
That's what this was about, about presenting a different show.
A variety
It
of
had
artists.
nothing to do with him. It was just like, well, and my thing with him at the time, with a lot of young comics was, because there's stories that get flipped. And here's what it is. I tell young comics that open for me, as long as you're doing new shit, I don't care if you bum.
Right. And I say the same thing.
I don't care.
I mean, give me a few minutes of good quality stuff in there to make sure it's not a terrible set. But if you experiment with something and you eat it,
not even me, because once you establish to me that you're funny and you got it, you don't have to establish that ever again. You got it, right? Now I need to know if you can duplicate it.
right.
Because anybody can write one great bit.
Yeah.
Every comic has one great bit.
Yeah.
Do
Usually
you
their
have
opener or
2,
closing joke.
3,
Yeah.
4, 10, 20? That's the difference. Now you get to see it on a daily basis because you see the open micer, shitty. Oh no, he can open. Oh wow, he can middle. He can feature. Oh wow, he can headline. I said that in a few seconds. In reality, that's years of work, and that you guys get to see the progress. Right. So I'm trying to teach these guys, how to deal with this and how to do with this. So with him, it was like, look, I can't bring you on this tour, but I've rewarded you with
Wings.
a writer job and a TV show.
Fly away.
And you got to be on the road with me and be a comedian and learn how to be a comedian and go on stage 6 to 8 times a week. Right. So, and he was like, well, I'm great. I'm funny. Well, good. Then I believe that. I'm not kicking you out. I'm just telling you that I don't think that this is the right tour to put you on. His perspective was, I worked hard for that moment. That was my moment.
Right.
Mine is, it was never your moment. That's my moment.
Right.
That's my tour. Those are my fans. That's my shit to do. So there was no animosity from my perspective. But when we were doing shows in Los Angeles, he showed up. And the show was what the show was. So I said, hey, you want to go on? Just open the show. And he said, I'm not going to open the show. I want to go on and headline the first chunk of the show, because there were 2 parts of the show. There's, so that you can sell stuff, so that they can sell concessions. So there was the first part of the show, and then an intermission, and then my part of the show. So he wanted to headline that part of the show. And I said, bro, I can't put you there. Now, he didn't know this at the time because he hadn't seen it, but Joe Coy was a fucking beast. Yeah. I mean, he was a fucking beast. And I hadn't seen, the last time I'd seen Steve was doing some old stuff that I thought he should rewrite. And he said, well, I'm doing all new shit. I go, but I haven't seen it. And I know you're funny, but dude, this show is tight. I don't want to fuck with it. So just go on first. And he was just utterly offended by that. He was just pissed to no fucking end. And somewhere in the middle of that conversation, I got fucking pissed. Because from my perspective, it's like, there's 6,000 people in that fucking room in a sold out show. And I'm giving you a spot.
Right.
I don't give a fuck what spot it is.
Any other comics.
I'm giving you a spot.
Yeah.
You know who opened one of those shows? Gabriel Iglesias.
Wow.
He didn't fucking bitch about it.
I never heard of that guy. Is he funny?
I brought him on. Now, see, I didn't discover him, but interestingly enough, when I did that Punisher tour, I asked him to be on the tour.
Yeah.
I asked him to be on the tour, I think before Joe Coy or at the same time. So there are young comics that have done well like him. I saw it and I tried to help him. I've helped him out with other stuff, but, advice and stuff. But with Steve, he was pissed. And at a certain point, I got mad because I was like, dude, I'm offering you a show in front of 6,000 people and you're telling me that I'm fucking you on this?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't. Now, his perspective is completely different, but it has to do with what his feelings were, his outcome is. Mine was, this isn't personal. I wasn't trying to put him in his place. Now, looking back, what happened with Steve was, and I told him this, I said, I tried to help him as a human being because he had some issues that I tried to help him through with. And my mistake was doing that so that I taught him lessons, hard lessons, like fucked up lessons, right? Like shit that you just don't want to hear. You're an addict type shit. Your parents treated you like this and that's why you act like this type shit. So that wasn't my place.
No.
And because of that,
It became
this
personal.
probably felt like that to him.
Yeah. Yeah.
This probably felt to him like you're trying to teach me a fucking lesson to put me in my place.
Right.
And that had nothing to do with it at that
I can
point.
see that perception. I can see that.
But see, what I've had to deal with in the past decade is what was my part in all of this? You know what I mean? Instead of just saying, you know what, Steve Trevino, that motherfucker's an ungrateful piece of shit. I fucking did this and this and that for him, and that motherfucker says bad things about me. Fuck him. I went, wait a minute, that's easy to do. Like, what was there was a dance. We were together for a long time.
Right.
What was my part in this? What did I do? And then, I backtracked and realized, like, all right,
That's probably what it
when
was.
we were in the car and my friend who doesn't have a father started crying because he doesn't have a father, and Steve started fucking with him, and then I started saying some shit about Steve's dad, and he got really offended. I meant to do that because I wanted him to feel the way he did and make him understand that's what you did. This is not my place to do that. And so it became something that it shouldn't have become. So I called him and said, I'm sorry for that. My bad. Didn't mean to. It was not my place. I apologize. And with him, I did the same shit. Do I have to talk to you about any of that other stealing shit? And he's like, no. And then he's like, but you know what? Just let it go, dude. You said no. You're probably going to say something else that you're going to regret. This is a good conversation. Let's just move on.
Right.
But those conversations and those dealings have led me to cut back on what I used to do more of. So I've had my opener now for 5-6 years, and I'm not looking for another one. I mean, when he quits, I'll find one, but I'm not looking for one. And part of it is, I help these comics out, and now I'm not friends with Steve. I don't talk to Christella. You know what I'm saying? That's not what I wanted.
You put a lot of energy into the relationship, and it sometimes becomes corroded or looks bad because of certain moments that are considered pinnacle moments. And it's unfortunate that all that other time, it's kind of like your girlfriend or your wife, and you
More
get in
wife.
a fight
Yeah.
and you say something mean,
Yeah.
and it's like, it doesn't matter if you wash the dishes or folded all the laundry or all that stuff for a month.
Right.
It's that time where you called her a fucking bitch.
Right.
And
Exactly.
that's the, they're going to harper on that. And,
Right.
And it's and I've seen it a lot. I mean, the comedy business, there is a lot of jaded elements that you got to do, not necessarily with these guys.
Well,
but
think about it. We're sick people, man. I mean, we do what 99% of all human beings. You know what their biggest fear is? To talk in front of other human beings.
Right.
It's their biggest fear. Literal biggest fear. When you hear about somebody, exacerbating and having a panic attack and all that, that's literally a fight or flight mechanism. So the subconscious brain doesn't know the difference between a perceived threat or a real threat.
Right.
Right? It doesn't know the difference.
Right.
And for anybody listening right now going, that doesn't make sense. Okay, why do you get scared at a scary movie? You know it's not real. You know it's there. You know nothing's going to happen to you. You know that no matter what happens on the screen, it will not affect you as a human being. And yet you fucking jump, you get goosebumps. Your subconscious has no idea that you're watching a movie. It just goes, oh, fuck, somebody's going to kill me. And that is the mechanism that people don't want to feel when they're told speak in front of others.
Right.
Take that into account. Now, add in a little selfishness, add in a little narcissism, throw in a little, don't tell me what to do. I'm on stage by myself. I'm the director, producer, writer, performer, actor. And all of a sudden you have a human being that is just me. And if you think that comic isn't going to have some fucked up issues at some point in their life, now you take that and splash in an element of I deserve better than I got on one end, or hey, here's a TV show on the other end. You're going to get some fucked up behaviors.
Yeah.
We're not even talking about the fact that most of us do drugs or some version of alcoholism just so that at the end of the night, or you can feel that feeling that you had when you were on stage. You add all that shit together, bro, and it is a fucking just deluge of shit in a broken human being.
Are you saying comedians have issues?
We're fucked up, dude. Until we become reflective. Until we become, and look, I thank God now for my trials and tribulations, because it led me to the introspection that I have now, and my ability now to talk about anything and anybody, and know that I know that somebody will perceive what I said about Steve. Somebody will say, oh, he was talking shit. And they'll tell Steve, and I'll tell Steve, listen to it. I didn't say anything negative about you. My point was, I understand your perspective now that I didn't understand then. And I got it.
You have grown up.
But I have. But I had my own perspective, by the way. I'm not negating my point of view, because my point of view was right.
It's relative to you.
Correct. Right. Now, today, what I would have said to him was, bro, you can't show up the night of a show and tell me to rearrange a show, because this is a spectacle.
Right.
I have motorcycles out there. I ride on stage with one of the motorcycles. This is a spectacle. And this show has been on the road for a long time, and it's tight as fuck. So if you want to do one of the other shows, we can prepare for that, and we can put you on there. But it's not fair to put you in that position and to put me in this position.
Right.
It's just not. And so, like, I would know how to deal with them, but I had no idea. In my mind, I was like, I'm offering you a spot in a sold-out show that you would never sell out. What the fuck is the problem? Yeah. I had no idea where he was coming from. Yeah. None. Fucking none. But reverse it, and I'm a young comic and I'm in Steve's position, and, Damon Wayans, says, hey, you want to open the show? I wouldn't be able to answer because his dick would be in my mouth. You know what I'm saying? You want to be on my, hey, what are you doing? I'm on the show. Yeah, of course. So when you're young, you view things by your prism, and that's the only way. If you're lucky enough to mature and get older, you view the prism through your own first, through secondary, tertiary after that. And so it's kind of like, I spend so much time with my friends going, dude, everybody's different. And they'll say stuff like, bro, I think so-and-so did so-and-so because did you see the way they were acting? I'm like, dude, you would act a different way. And that's why you think that that's not how you behave. Right. But that's not how it works. Everybody's different. Everybody has their own way. And so you need to understand that that's their way. So you need to get to a different space. For me, it was through therapy, through introspection, through dealing, through telling myself, I'm not going to be the angry, bitter comic who's pissed off at the world. I'll take my hits, take my lumps. I'll deal with whatever deals. And I know that I'm too talented to not overcome all this eventually. Now, there are people that believe I'll never hit those heights again. I don't even believe that those heights were as crazy as people think they were. But, what I try to do with young comics is go, look, these are my stories, and these stories are duplicated, forever. And just deal with the fact that life is life, and you don't get to choose how people feel about you. That's their choice.
It's very true.
I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Right? If we were here talking about Robin Williams, right? Robin Williams in our community was chastised for being a plagiarist and a joke thief. But when you talk about it today, people
revere him.
Yes, but it's because he was a genius. It's because his mind was so fucking absorbent that he would walk by, not even realize that he heard a joke.
Yeah. It didn't have that filter.
He just, that was his genius.
Yeah.
But then they'll go, Carlos, he walked by and heard a joke. Yeah, but he stole it on purpose, that piece of shit. Yeah. And so my thing to them is, look, the reason why I'm telling you this is not to complain that I can't believe I'm not being treated with the same gloves as he is, or that is it racism because I'm not white? That's not what I'm telling. What I'm telling you is I have no control over that. Those are other comics and their perceptions. Their perceptions of me might turn into the perceptions that he has at some point when I die later on, when I'm not a threat, or when I'm kinder to them, whatever the case is. But you don't get to choose. And so I try to help these guys through those emotional minefields, which, by the way, now you know why I get in trouble emotionally with these same fucking people.
Right.
Because, you know, at a certain point, some of them are going to embrace it. Others are going to, you know, reject it. And I have a father, don't tell me what to do. And those were the moments that I did not know. But I try to help these young comics out in that respect.
And the thing was, 12 years ago, maybe 13 years
13,
ago.
something like that.
And it's, I've obviously been watching you for years, and your stick, you record every show.
Yeah.
I've watched
ever since I met you.
Yeah. Yeah, you've been recording.
I record all the shows.
Yeah, T-shirts.
Everything.
You got tons of merch. What I'm trying to get to is, since that, have you been more cognate of, like, just ensuring that there's no question with something? Like, how did you, other than just continuing to do your comedy and doing the work, but is there another step of that extra level of filtering that you've now applied just to ensure that,
Yes, but no. See, the problem there is. And this is what I've learned, and I just recently kind of got over it. There's nothing I could do about that.
Right.
Right? Like, literally, something could happen right now, like as we're speaking, before the show, right? That everybody knows. A shooting, a school shooting, something, right? Like something. And I could go on stage that night and do a joke about that thing that happened 3 hours before the show.
Right.
And post that on YouTube and just wait for the "where did you steal that" comment.
Right.
Right. Now, there's no logic to that.
No.
They know it happened 3 hours ago because it was a school shooting that happened 3 hours ago. There's no way, but that's going to happen. You know what I mean? The joke about the wall, even way back then, 10 comedians did that joke. 10.
Oh, yeah. It was a very generic joke.
Correct, yeah. But I was the only one accused of stealing it. So my point isn't to bitch or complain about it. Whatever, it is what it is. I've learned to deal. My point is that I can't filter out enough for those people. The only way that I would ever be able to do that, and even this wouldn't work, is if all I did was stories about my family and me. But I guarantee you, at one point, it would be like, well, his father has an accent just like my father. So now my dad has to be white because I can't make him,
right.
The Latino that he is, or my mom, the Mexican that she is. And so you just can't go there. You literally have to be
I think in a lot of
funny.
ways, there's things that you've created that I've heard over the years from other
Sure,
comics.
of course.
And it's, the DTD, and that whole voice,
Sure.
I remember one time I went to, I think it was South Padre to watch you and Freddie and Trevino. I think
Right.
Trevino was opening there. And, I fell in love with Freddie.
Yes.
There was this comic locally that was doing the Freddie voice. And we all know the Freddie voice,
Right.
His dad and all
interestingly enough, right? So you go back.
Right.
Right. And now there are only a few people that know this. But when Freddie Soto's dad was, first of all, I almost took a bullet for Freddie Soto, right? Like literally almost. I don't know if you know the story.
No, I didn't know that.
So it's a long story. So